Welcome everybody to another Commanders Film Room, where we get to review the top 5 plays from on every Tuesday at 5:30. We review the top 5 plays of the Commanders game. We are down a man with Big Doug. He's actually out sick today. Hopefully you're feeling well, Doug. We actually thought about wearing your T-shirts in solidarity, but we forgot today. It's all good. We couldn't coordinate in time, but hopefully you're doing well. I'm here with Mark Bullock. How you doing today, Mark?
I'm good, thanks. And yourself?
Doing very well, man. Very happy after a win. I'm also here with Nick Akridge. How you doing today, sir?
Good, man. Wins are Monday mornings after wins are the best because my mentions are not nearly as toxic.
100%. I can imagine. So today, guys, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the progression of Sam Howell. We're going to kind of look at some big plays. He did another big game on Sunday. We had an amazing Jahan Dotson touchdown we're going to review. We're also going to look at the new look defense of the Commanders. So without further ado, let's jump into the film. If you're in the chat, feel free to ask some questions. We'll have some live interaction, and let's get started. So let me pull it up. I think, Nick, are you up first?
No, this one's all Mark.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, so I thought I'd start off with just what looks like a fairly routine and basic play, but something that we've seen Howell kind of struggle with this season, which is sort of dealing with blitzes. And this is not the most amazingly diverse blitz from the Patriots, but it is somewhat disguised blitz. They've got a slot corner coming off the slot to the right-hand side, and he's going to be replaced by the deep safety. And to replace the deep safety, they've got a safety down in the box on the left side to swing back and replace him. So they've got a bit of a coverage rotation to allow a slot blitz. And this is something that Sam Howell typically has struggled with. He hasn't identified blitzes and dealt with them particularly well. And that's not just on him as well. That's on the offensive line as part two. But as we see as this one rolls on, you can roll this into it, Nick. Howell sees that slot coming late, and he knows that he's going to be hot on that side. He doesn't have any protection against that slot blitz. So he quickly identifies that, the blitz is coming from the slot. The place to throw is over the top of that slot defender. He has Jahan Dotson on that quick out. And so he shortens up his drop. He doesn't take a full drop. He just takes a quick step, and he knows that blitz is coming. And he hits Jahan Dotson over the top of that blitz in time for Dotson to secure that pass and beat that safety that was rotating down from deep. So I thought it was just a nice play to start off to highlight that, he identified a blitz. He adjusted his drop to speed things up, and he threw over that blitz and had a successful play. So it's something that he has struggled with this year, and it's a good sign of progress that he is learning lessons, and he's becoming just better as a all-round quarterback in identifying those things and learning how to deal with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Mark said, it's a tiny thing. It's a pretty simple throw once you kind of recognize what's happening. But we've seen multiple moments this past year of him not recognizing these sort of things. So it's just nice because you beat something like this easily, and it stops defensive coordinators from continuously calling it and keep pressuring him with it. So it's always good to see that he makes this isn't really routine, but the routine kind of throws with noticing the corner blitz and throwing at it.
Gotcha. And it definitely seems like it's a very smart play, right? So what I was kind of interested in is, if this is something that happens often, right? Is this more like Eric Bieniemy kind of giving him an easy outlet, or like I've always heard he's going to throw over the blitz. If you kind of see a blitz coming, kind of throw right at it or throw at that missing spot. Mark, is this kind of like something that's been going on all year long? Is like, has there been outlets for Sam, or just kind of Sam showing growth for the first time?
There has been outlets for him. It largely depends on the protection and the scheme involved. Like here, they have only really 5 in protection. I think the running back might be checking before releasing, but it's really only 5. And so when you have only 5 blockers staying in, then typically you will have some routes that will adjust to a blitz. And I think this was just the called route on the play. But it could well have been a slight adjustment where Jahan Dotson sees that guy blitzing, and the corner kind of gives it away just before the snap. So it kind of makes it easy for him to make an adjustment. And that makes it a little bit easier, and Hal and Dotson would be on the same page at that point. But again, I think it was kind of just a case of that was the called route, and Hal recognized that guy at that spot before he was coming, and the correct decision was to throw it.
Gotcha. Sounds good.
All right, let's go to I call this the WTF throw.
Amazing
the throw that we probably all had our breaths held for when he actually decided to throw this and saw it floating in the air for probably 5 to 10 seconds. But it's actually a pretty incredible play. And I might be giving him too much credit here and noticing that they have some sort of coverage bust with this blitz. But I'm going to pretend like he noticed it. So pre-snap, you've got a bunch of guys up at the line. They're showing a zero blitz. So you're going to have to get the ball out quick, make someone miss. Right here, this is what the coverage should look like. It's a cover 3 fire zone. What that means is they're going to send about 5 guys. You only have 6 dropping back in coverage, and as you can kind of see here, you've got your 3 deep, and then you're going to have 3 underneath. The problem here with the Patriots is one of these guys, linebackers / corners, do not do their job here. And it took me a while to figure this out. I went through a lot of Patriots blitzes to figure out who's at fault here. But number 8 here, Juwan Bentley, is supposed to drop off of this blitz and cover this curl flat over here. And Howell kind of notices that they all blitz, that everyone blitzes here, and there's only one guy on this side of the field, and he's dropping to a deep third. So again, I could be giving him too much credit here, but he does a good job of noticing that everyone's coming, and this whole side of the field is wide open. There's no one within 30 yards of any of these guys. And then it's just incredible arm strength to make this throw. And it's even freakier from the end zone view to just kind of show how he made this throw and can kind of contort his body to make it. So again, pre-snap, they're showing zero blitz. Everyone comes. They've got everyone coming here. So he knows, at least I think that he knows, that there's only one guy dropping into a deep third. He has to bail because of a failed pickup of the stunt over here. Bails this way, knows that no one's over there, and just chucks a kind of perfect ball across the entire field, and it leads to a big gain.
It's amazing. There's a lot of great takeaways there. So for one, awesome arm strength, awesome off-platform throw off his back foot, awesome recognition. It's crazy. Once you showed the whole cover 3, drop back, it was wide open. There's actually 2 commanders there.
Yeah, Logan tried to make a nice diving catch there.
Yeah, it was fantastic. So that was impressive. I like the fact that he knew that, he obviously knew where the play was going. Mm-hmm. I guess further takeaways, going further, how would the offensive line look all together, Nick? Could you kind of have a snapshot of them throughout the game? How'd they look today or on Sunday?
It was similar problems to last week.
Okay.
In terms of, the center and left guard kind of struggling with some stunts and picking up some stunts. There was a lot of free rushers, but again, the game plan was good where you were getting the ball out of his hands quickly. And Sam Howell was a lot better, as we kind of just showed with that previous play. He was a lot better at getting the ball out and knowing where he needs to go, where he's hot, and whatnot. But there were still some issues here between the center and left guard. And I didn't mean to pick this play for that, but there's another, free rusher coming through here. And you've got 3 blockers here. You should have 3 people being able to pick that stun up, but it looks like Paul Letts shouldn't hang on to 91 so much and peel off and pick up 55. But Howell makes a great play here to just, that's incredible to throw it from there completely across the field. He's throwing it from his own 7-yard line, and it goes to the 32 across the field. It's like 50 yards in the air essentially if you think about it. So just an incredible play.
Mark, what's your big takeaway from the play?
Man, it's one of those plays where you're screaming, no. Yes, oh my God, what a play.
Exactly.
The one question I have is, do we think he knows that Logan Thomas was out there somewhere and he was just hurling it out there hoping he was going to get it? Or do you think he saw Pringle on that crosser and thought, I can hit that? Because in the end, they're both kind of in the area, and we saw that Logan Thomas was diving for that ball.
I thought about the same thing, and I think he notices Pringle. You can kind of see him here as he starts to run. He's looking this way, and he kind of sees Pringle right here. He's kind of looking in this direction. And I think that's when he realizes he can just chuck this up.
Yep.
Again, I could be giving him way too much credit here, knowing that there's a coverage bust on this side. But if he does notice it, it's just even more impressive. And
gentlemen, I have a question in the chat I'm gonna throw up here. I'm not sure if you know the answer, but question from Arch. Sorry if you already covered this. How is Sam handling his cadence and snap count? Is he varying it? Is that something you've noticed or picked up, or kind of it's kind of something to wait and see to look at?
It's kind of tough to pick up on film because there's no audio.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough, but you haven't seen many, instances of, failed or miscommunication between him and the center, even with a second center now that he's got. So
that's true. He's definitely, 10th start, working with a second center. We don't see a lot of delay of game penalties or anything like that. Someone's doing pretty well. So I agree with that. Cool. Let's go on the next one.
All right. Next one, we're going to look at the Jahan Dotson touchdown. And this
Gorgeous
one is
play.
all Mark again.
Yeah. So we could probably talk about this for the entire time of this show if we wanted to, but
I love it.
There's so many good things from Hal in this play. The first is kind of harping on that point that I made in the first play we looked at, where he's identifying a blitz. The Patriots are showing a cover zero look. It's not quite cover zero because they have the nose tackle drop out late, but it's still effectively a cover zero. It's a variation of cover zero, and you see how identifying that from the different clues. And if you go back to a few weeks ago when there was the Giants game, we talked about how he didn't notice the safety that was on one side of the offensive line that didn't have anyone to cover on that side. So it was kind of obvious he was blitzing, but they still didn't get the line slide correct. Whereas here you can see that there's a safety over the two slot receivers. That's where the safeties are. And so he identifies that, okay, we've got safeties over those slot receivers. I think everyone else is kind of creeping forward here to kind of have a blitz. And so he identifies that, right, it's cover zero. So he signals, you can see him there kind of signaling to Logan Thomas, I want Logan Thomas to come in and join the protection. So Logan Thomas moves in and he accounts for the guy on the edge. And Brian Robinson, running back, slides across and helps him with that. And then the whole offensive line is able to slide left into where that blitz was coming from. So just as a pre-snap process, Hal does a really good job of identifying that I've got safeties over the slot, I've got a blitz coming, I bring in Logan Thomas to help join the protection. That lets me slide the line all the way to the left and get that blitz picked up. So from a pre-snap process, that's excellent. Then post-snap, we've got a double post concept on the top here. So Jahan Dotson's running the inside post, Terry McLaurin on the outside is running the outside post. And typically when you run this play, Jahan Dotson's inside post route is just there to grab the safety in the middle of the field, take him out of the way, and open up the post route from McLaurin on the outside. But on this occasion, because it's cover zero, there's no safety in the middle of the field. So the safety is covering Jahan Dotson, which means Hal basically identifies, oh, I've got Jahan Dotson one-on-one on a safety. I'm just going to go with that. So I saw a lot of people asking the question of, oh, hey, both of these receivers kind of end up in the same spot. But is that kind of intentional? And the concept is intentional. Them ending up in the same spot isn't necessarily, but it's as a result of the play. So you can let it run on. You can see how Jahan Dotson pretty quickly beats that safety once the protection stuff gets sorted out and they snap the ball. Dotson beats that safety quickly, and Hal pulls the trigger. And I think Terry McLaurin on the outside, had he recognized that, this is cover zero and Jahan Dotson's just beating a safety, he probably holds his route outside and doesn't break it in quite so hard. But I think he's just thinking this is the normal double post concept, and that ball's for me because the safety's being cleared out by Dotson. So he runs inside trying to get to it. But yeah, here you can see he brings Thomas in, the whole line slides left, picks up that blitz. He's got plenty of time to deliver that throw, and then it's a beautiful throw down the field to Dotson. And it's nice to see Dotson finally catch one on those deep shots.
Absolutely. And it's actually, it's really interesting. For one, New England's kind of known for having like exotic blitz packages and kind of being complex. So it's kind of nice seeing that Sam, sees the read, pulls in Logan Thomas. I do like that. I love the fact that he throws the anticipation. Like, it was very immediate. He knew he was going to throw it to Jahan Dotson almost immediately. It's, 1, 2, 3 step drop, bam, lets it fly. And Jahan Dotson makes a great catch there. So, it's really impressive. And it almost looks like the safety comes up for like press coverage, just misses maybe right here too. And
well, once you see the safety and press coverage on Dotson and then everyone comes and it's 0, it's a pretty easy decision after that. You just kind of trust Dotson to win. And there's nothing fancy about it, just straight speed and burns by him.
I love it. So, gentlemen, I know you guys study the film and you guys grind it. So 2 straight weeks, you see Sam Howell performing pretty well against the Eagles, Sam Howell against the Patriots now. Are we seeing signs of growth in him? Is that kind of is that the takeaway? Is it Eric going to be calling a better game? Like, what's your immediate, 2-game judgment so far? We can't have long-term projections.
Yeah.
What do you guys see?
I think Sam is improving leaps and bounds over some stuff that he was really, really struggling with early on. And again, a lot of these plays we saw in the past where there ends up being a free rusher somewhere because he doesn't kind of slide line it again. We don't know if it's him making the calls every single time, but here he does a good job with it, or just kind of panicking and taking sacks and whatnot. But he's doing so much better with, taking care of the blitz and getting the ball out where it needs to be and making the right decisions and very much limiting the mistakes other than the one really, really bad one at the end of the half. But we don't have to talk about that.
Mark, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think you obviously, in the NFL world, we live in a week-to-week overreactionary world. But with a quarterback's development, especially a young quarterback, you have to take a macro view of things. And rather than living in the ups and downs of each week, you have to try to think of where the guy was at the start of the year and compare that to where the guy is either now or at the end of the year, preferably. And what we're seeing in the last few weeks is we're seeing that he is becoming a lot more efficient. He's cutting down on the sacks that he was responsible for. He's improving in areas like identifying blitzes and adjusting protections. That's allowing him to have more time to take those shots down the field, as we're seeing here. So there is definite improvement, but that doesn't mean that next week he will be exactly the same. Next week he could well get sacked 5 or 6 times again and have 3 or 4 of those be on him, holding onto the ball too long. Obviously, you'd hope that you have a steady progression in an upward trend, but it doesn't always work like that. And so, a few weeks ago after the Giants game, everyone was saying he's terrible and give up on him. And now 2 weeks later, Ron Rivera is telling everyone that I found a franchise quarterback. So you just have to, kind of have to take a zoomed out view of things and understand that there is progression going on. He still has a ways to go to prove that this is a consistent development and not just a high of a few weeks or a low of a few weeks.
Exactly.
But he is trending in the right direction. So I think you can be optimistically positive, but within reason.
I got you. I think you said it best last week, Mark. Growth isn't always linear, so he's has its ups and downs. So we're going to kind of see how it goes there. I think it's a little bit of Ron Rivera campaigning for his job a little bit because he selected Sam Howell. He wants to kind of flaunt the fact that he has him. But the big takeaway for me, this is a great NFL throw. He drops the ball in the bucket. Safety's coming over. He puts the ball only where Jahan Dotson can get it. It's a great catch too. So
play. I mean the questions with Howell was never the throw part. I mean, once he figured out the blitz and all that sort of stuff and got the protection right, no one's doubting that he can make this throw consistently. I mean, that was never a question. It was just getting to the point where you can make this throw in a pocket like this against a 0-ish blitz. Again, dropping your nose tackle is always fun to see, but it's still man across the board. So
Greg Mineski special right there. I love it. That's fantastic.
There's been too much positive going on. So we'll talk about the massive touchdown they gave up to Ramondre Stevenson. And it's just a good example of why kind of run fits and what they call on defense matters, and it's not always what it seems. And Jonathan Vilma did a great job of talking about this after it happened and just kind of explaining that while it does look very bad for David Mayo, he does exactly what he needs to do. And Jamin Davis was the culprit for the big part, and then just a missed tackle at the end. But we drew up here. It's a cross dog blitz, so you're going to have your two linebackers. They're going to cross each other. Mayo is going to hit first. He's going to hit the first hole here, this opposite A gap, and then Davis is supposed to loop around him in the other A gap. Problem is he's just a little slow to do that, and that leads to a big hole. So Mayo's perfectly fine here. He's in this A gap. The problem is Davis he's got to fold over the top, and he needs to be right here. And he gets kind of hung up there. And you saw on the broadcast Del Rio talking to Jamin after the play, and he's probably telling him this thing right there is there's no reason to just kind of hold off here. He needs to get to that opposite gap, and then once this happens, you never want it to be one-on-one with a safety, and Percy Butler doesn't make the play, and then it's just a house call after that. But just kind of important to show the run fits and whatnot, and it's not always what it seems.
This is the type of play where if you're like on the Patriots side, it's like, we got them in the right call. We hit everything effectively. It was a home run shot right there. And, obviously Jamin Davis just couldn't get there in time, but it was a difficult play.
Yeah, run stunts are difficult. Sometimes it works out great for the defense. Sometimes it puts you in a horrible spot that you can't recover.
Exactly.
This one should have worked out. It should have been a pretty good call. You should have had Davis kind of free here in this A gap, but it just didn't work, and then missed tackles and house call.
I also would add, I think Jonathan Allen also slightly messes this up a little bit because he lines up on the
you're right,
on the guard, and he gets kind of reached and kicked out, and that allows the left guard to climb up and get to Jamin Davis a little bit quicker than he necessarily would have. Well, he wouldn't have been able to do that if Jonathan Allen had stayed in his gap. So Jonathan Allen didn't help on the play as well, but Jamin Davis, you hope, is quick enough to still be able to beat the guard to the spot, and he wasn't. So I think that primarily Jamin Davis is at fault here, but Jonathan Allen certainly doesn't help him.
And Nick, run through that. I like that. That's a very good eye mark. I like that a lot. So he basically, because he's not lined up over the guard gets up quickly, catches Jamin Davis, and allows the running back to come through.
Yeah, and then he just gets reached and put in the C gap here, and he needs to be. Oops.
And then I guess while we're waiting to go back to that clip, is Deron Payne doing anything poorly here, or is this a great play by the guard? He seems like his body's kind of turned in the wrong direction.
He's fine here. He's in the B gap. This is what he needs to do. He needs to kind of get across here, and he's perfectly fine.
Okay.
He can't really do anything for the play hitting in the A gap here.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's just basically Jonathan Allen should be in the B gap, which should occupy the guard it should occupy the guard, but it should certainly occupy him for longer than it did, because Allen kind of stunts outside a little bit, and the tackle kind of gets him and pins him outside. The guard is able to get off quicker and get to Jamin Davis earlier. So that makes it a little bit harder for Davis to make his gap, but you would still hope that Jamin Davis is able to hit that quicker than he does. And you obviously, a linebacker is meant to be more athletic than a guard, so you hope that he's able to beat the guard to the spot and go make the play regardless.
Makes sense.
All right, enough of the negatives. We'll go back to some positives. Some Emmanuel Forbes stuff.
Yeah, I don't know which one you want to start with, but I showed up. I put a bunch of clips up there, so we can start whichever one you want to start with. But
this is him dropping into zone.
Yeah, so this is something they didn't do particularly often in this game. It's something I would like to see them do more often with him, because he was drafted to be a kind of zone match corner. And in this game, weirdly, they played a ton of cover one, but you can see how much more comfortable he is when he's playing zone coverage, when he's allowed to play often with vision. He's responsible for a deep quarter here. It's just quarters coverage. And if we go back to, you can see how he uses his kind of shuffle technique. He's able to play with vision on both the quarterback and the receiver. He just opens his hips, and you can see how he can see through the receiver to the quarterback. And that allows him to read both the quarterback for the throw and the receiver for whatever route they're running. And you can see how he he reads that receiver breaking out pretty early on. He anticipates that route very well, and almost runs it for the receiver, and kind of makes it impossible for Mac Jones to fit that throw in there. And as a result, Jones kind of has to throw it way towards the sideline to give his receiver any chance of making a play instead of Forbes, and in the end it falls incomplete. But yeah, I just thought it was a nice rep of Forbes in zone coverage, and something we haven't seen him have the opportunity to do that often. He's a guy that they drafted specifically to fit their kind of zone and match coverage schemes, and they weirdly gone away from that for some reason.
It's one of the weirdest things ever, because you go and get a guy and he fits perfectly into your scheme, and then you decide to try a different scheme randomly, and it's very, very strange. But yeah, this is what he did a ton at Mississippi State, and it allows him to just kind of, like Mark said, just play off and be able to read it more instead of just trying to play press man. And I hope they keep doing this more. But again, they did play a lot of man coverage this past week, and that probably had a lot to do with the Patriots receivers not being the best. But they tried the same thing with the Bears receivers, who, other than DJ Moore, aren't very great, and DJ Moore kind of toasted them for it. So
exactly.
Hopefully that's not the same this coming week against the Seahawks.
It is interesting. So I think Emmanuel Forbes is known for being that ball hawk, have that instinct to kind of break on the ball and kind of watch the ball come in zone. So I like seeing more of this as part of the gameplay. And I like the fact that they were smart about deploying him against the Patriots, right? The wide receivers are not Stephon Diggs and A.J. Brown, that gauntlet he saw earlier in the year. So it's kind of good to get his feet underneath him. I guess we're going to kind of hint at this. Like, were you overall happy with his performance, guys? Or what are your thoughts so far?
Oh yeah, it's why my mentions weren't as toxic as they were in past weeks. When you get someone with a 90+ grade, especially your first round rookie corner,
everybody's happy.
Yeah, everyone's happy with that. But no, it was just a great performance. We charted him with 7 targets. He allowed 2 catches for 12 yards, and the big thing was 4 forced incompletions. So it's just, that's what you drafted him for, to make plays on the ball, and should have came away with a pick, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah, and on this clip, I've got 2 different plays sewn together in this clip. So the first one is a really quick slant, and you can see he's isolated one-on-one with this receiver outside who's just trying to win quickly on a quick slant. And obviously Forbes does well in the end. But if we just go back to that first slant, and there's a few technical things that you'd like to see him do a little bit better. Off the snap here, he gets his hips open very quickly, and better receivers will probably cut across his face, chop his arm down, and stop him from recovering. But what we do see is the athletic ability that he does have. He's able to adjust his feet, flip his hips incredibly quickly, to get himself back into a somewhat decent position. And then the receiver still kind of has his body in front of him, but he's got the arm length to be able to still reach in and get his hand in at the catch point and make sure that catch can't be made. But later on in the game, this was a similar route. It was a little bit deeper. It wasn't an instant slant. We see Forbes be a lot more patient. He doesn't open himself up immediately. And that means he's able to stick with the receiver a lot tighter into the route. And when the receiver goes to break, Forbes is on his outside hip, and he's able to sit in a good position where he can look back for the throw and undercut the route, as opposed to trying to wrap around the top of the guy and get his hand in at the catch point. This time he's able to undercut the route. And that's a much better position for him to be in, to be able to make a play on the ball. And as you can see on this one, he's able to make that play on that ball and break it up. So both reps were, the pass was incomplete, so they were decent, but you could see that there is some technique work that he needs to improve on. And you'd like to see him be just that little bit more patient rather than biting so heavily on that initial jab step and relying on trying to cut that guy off with his hand, because a better receiver will chop that hand away and get inside of him. But he was able to get away with it here, and then later in the game you see that technique is a little bit better, and he's a little bit more patient at the snap. that he gets into a better position on the receiver's outside hip. And knowing that he has that safety help inside on this play probably helps that as well. And then because he's in that position on his outside hip, he's able to turn his head as the receiver breaks inside either quarterback and undercut the route to make a play on the ball. So, and that's exactly what you want a guy like Forbes to be doing when he is up in press coverage. You want him to still be able to locate the ball and making plays on it and undercut a route. So, I think as we've kind of touched on, both Nick and I would like to see him more in off coverage and zone coverage. But if he's going to play man coverage, you want to see him improving his technique, where he's doing a lot more like this, where he's positioning himself better. He's a little bit more patient at the snap and not biting on the first move of the release. He's waiting for the receiver to declare their intention and then sticking to their hip and positioning himself so that he can undercut throws and make plays on the ball.
This is a difficult question. I know it might be hard to gauge. Have you seen a lot of growth from him from that little benching period where he kind of had to sit out and kind of watch from the sidelines, or is he just have a good game, or it's too early to tell? What do you guys have so far on that?
I think it's a little too early to tell. I mean, obviously you want him to perform like this against, these types of receivers, but he's going to have a lot bigger of a test this next week against the Seahawks.
Yeah, great core.
So the jury is still out, and it's going to still be out. It's the same thing with Sam Howell. Like you can't make judgments this quickly. I guess this is only like his fourth really game because he was benched for a couple times, but fourth or fifth game. And so you can't make these judgments too quickly. You can't write him off too quickly. You can't call him a bust. And now you can't, say he's back and this is why you drafted him in the first round and all that stuff after one good game. So I know it's tough, but just kind of hold off on the praise for right now. See if he can string a couple more weeks together. And he's not going to have a 90+ grade and have 4 forced incompletions and only allow 2 catches every single week. And there could be some weeks where it's just, allow 5 catches for 50 yards or whatever. And that's still a lot better than what it was in the past. So it's just a slow growth. And that's kind of what the rest of the season should be. It's a kind of a growing process for all of the young players.
Exactly right.
We got one more Forbes one.
Yeah, the last Forbes one I put in there was kind of talking about how you mentioned how we see some growth from him. And this was a play where one of the few times the Patriots actually tried to attack him with a double move. And obviously we've seen double moves be a problem for him this season. And I think we see a little bit of a difference in him here than what we saw earlier in the season, because he knows he has the quickness to jump on those routes underneath. He doesn't need to be so tight. And you can see the difference here is that he's given himself a cushion. He's 5 yards off the receiver when they're breaking inside, and he still bites up in position ready to attack that route as it breaks inside, but he gives himself the cushion to stay on top of the route for if that receiver then fakes that move inside and breaks up the field. So by giving himself that cushion, he knows he still has the athleticism and the quickness to break on something if it is a route that breaks over the middle or underneath or whatever, but he also gives himself the cushion to be able to recover if that receiver does turn into a double move. And so you can see that cushion as the play goes through, he really gives himself a chance to stay on top of it. And he still makes a bit of an error here. He kind of assumes that receiver is fading out to the sideline, and he kind of gets himself mixed up and has to use a speed turn to get back out of it. And if that throw had been more towards the middle of the field, he might have been in trouble. But I think the main takeaway from this play is how he's given himself more of a cushion, and that allows him the chance to recover if that receiver does run a double move, as they do on this play. So if you're looking for signs of growth from him, this is potentially one. Obviously, this was only 1 rep, and so you have to see him do that consistently. But if you're looking for a sign of growth of something that he was really struggling with earlier in the year, and something he really struggled with in college as well, those double moves have been a long issue for him. So to be able to give himself that little bit of extra cushion for you want him to be tight to receivers, you want him to be able to make plays on the ball, but he has that quickness to make up ground if he's driving down on routes underneath. So he doesn't need to be so tight to them. He can afford to give himself that extra 5 yards because he can make up that ground And by doing that, he gives himself just that little bit of extra protection against that double move if it does happen.
I like it. He kind of creates a little margin of error to kind of like play around with the quarterback and kind of jump on it if he needs to. Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
No, I was just about to say that this was a massive problem in college, like Mark said. Like if you just watch his tape, it's jumping. He's jumping everything. There was never a moment where he wasn't going to try to jump a route, and we saw it again in the NFL. And the Eagles kind of really went at him because of it. And this is a lot better. Like Mark said, just kind of keep that cushion here. There's no reason to kind of jump that. Gives himself a nice 5-yard cushion, able to recover, and just a much better rep. Something
that pops to me, I know this is an Emmanuel Forbes play, but on the top, I don't know what edge rusher is coming from the top of the play. He's coming in quick. I don't know if it's a blitz or what's going on right there.
That's Quan Martin, who only gets like 10 snaps a game.
Came in flying. I mean, it's a little bit flat. He flew by the quarterback, but definitely some jump on the ball right there.
I think it's more of a really deep drop from the quarterback than anything. The tight end does just enough to kind of keep him away from the quarterback here. And but he makes plays for whatever reason. He only plays like I think he had 15 snaps this past week, which was the most he's had. But that only happened really because they went really DB heavy on that last drive that the Patriots had, and that's where he was playing a lot.
Gotcha.
Before that, he still was not playing very often. So again, I want to see the young guys. I want to see them get a shot here because when he is in the game, he makes plays. So
exactly.
Just want to see more of him.
Yeah, it's the point of the season, right? Just developing. We're not going to win the Super Bowl this year per se, so let's go out there and kind of develop our player and see how it goes.
Yep.
Cool. How many more do we got, guys?
I think that's it.
That was all I had.
Yeah.
I thought that Dotson touchdown was going to take us the entire show. So,
I guess, gentlemen, to kind of wrap up the show, like, what's one positive takeaway you take away from the game so far, and what's like one area of growth you want to see kind of moving forward? I guess start off with you, Mark.
Well, I think the overwhelming positive is the efficiency we've seen with Sam Howell play in back-to-back games so far, and that's obviously the biggest question with him this season has been his ability to avoid sacks, and he struggled with holding onto the ball and taking sacks that he just doesn't need to take. And so we've seen these past two games that he's capable of developing. He is starting to understand that, okay, I can identify different markers in coverage, whether it's a safety over a slot receiver when they wouldn't typically be, or it's a corner out of position, some sort of identifier pre-snap that there might be a blitz coming that way, so I need to adjust the protection to get that picked up. Or maybe it's I don't need to adjust the protection. I know I've got a receiver running the right route and I can just throw over that blitz, so I just need to adjust my drop to get the ball out quicker, as we saw in the first play of this. So, I think that is the big overwhelming positive, is that we're seeing development and growth from Hal in that regard. I think if there's a negative, we kind of touched on it a little bit, that the offensive line is still not great. I've kind of been saying the whole year, the offensive line has been good enough for the quarterback to be efficient, but they're not good enough for the quarterback to be anything but efficient. And I think that is still kind of holding true, even with the changes that they've made. I don't think Tyler Larson's made a difference in terms of the calls and making sure that the right people are going to the right defenders. And so things aren't being mistargeted quite so often. But in terms of physically blocking people and handling like stunts and stuff, they're still having issues up front. And maybe not quite so much as, say, in that Giants game where it was just horrendous, but it's still not great. That's still a negative. But the offensive line in general is still playing well enough for how to be efficient, and how it has developed to a point where, at least in these past few games, he is being efficient enough to overcome those issues up front. And that's why the offense has been successful the past few games.
Gotcha. So the growth of Sam Howell, the offensive line, still kind of a question. Nick, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I mean, those were going to be my two answers as well. The O-line has been a hot topic for all of Twitter the whole entire year. And, when Sam was taking a bunch of sacks, it was all the offensive line's fault. Now he's not taking sacks. It's none of their faults. And just breaking down the film kind of shows you that there's still problems there. And it's offensive line play can really be kind of masked by quarterback play and whatnot. And you just kind of have to kind of rewatch and just kind of see what's going on. And Sam Howell has done a much, much better job, which is why we're not seeing as many sacks. But like Mark said, there's still a problem there between that center and left guard. That A gap right there is where you see a lot of free rushers come through there. But if I had to pick something different than him,
appreciate that.
I would say some good is Jahan Dotson. I mean, back-to-back weeks where he's really kind of torched DBs, and there was one more drop this week. Maybe we have to start worrying about that soon, but there is still, he's just torching DBs, and it's nice to see him finally kind of get rewarded with the ball. He was still kind of open in previous weeks, but it's nice to see him get rewarded. As for the one negative, it's the defensive line, and mostly for me, it's the interior too. I think I haven't really seen enough from Allen and Payne this year to really kind of get too excited. We obviously know we're going to lose a lot of pressures and sacks and whatnot from the edge with no Chase Young and Montez Sweat, but I would really like to see those two interior guys really kind of step it up. And it's been a bit of a down year for the two of them. So I'd say that's my one negative.
Gotcha. And actually, last question, guys. I didn't actually ask you. How do you guys feel about the whole trade? I didn't ask you about Montez Sweat and Chase Young leaving. Do you guys have a preference or thoughts on that?
I talked about it a lot with Doug last week. So I'll let Mark take over. I know he's been getting killed on Twitter sometimes with some Chase Young talk.
Yeah, it was a very up and down day for me, that trade deadline day, because when they traded Montez Sweat, I thought, and the return that they got from that bare second round pick, which can end up being a top 3 or 5 pick in that second round, I thought that was tremendous value. I thought that was top end value that they could have got from Montez Sweat, and I thought it solved that whole issue of, can we pay both of these guys? How do we keep all these guys? And okay, well, now we've traded one, that means we can tie down the other, and we can make that work. And then a few hours later, they go ahead and trade Chase Young anyway, and clearly there was stuff going on behind the scenes where there was some sort of disconnect between Chase Young and either the coaching staff or Ron Rivera or some people in that building. Whoever it was, clearly they had some sort of problem with Chase Young. But from just watching purely the film, I mean, Chase Young was their best defensive lineman this year, and he was their main source of pressure. As Nick said, Allen and Payne haven't quite been up to scratch this year. And part of the reason Allen has struggled has been a little bit to do with being matched up with Young on that side. And they both kind of try to attack the same gap sometimes. But in general, Chase Young has been their primary source of pressure. And to see him, when you have a guy with his talent starting to fulfill that talent at only 24 years old, you kind of feel like that should be a building block for the future, not a guy that you're trading away for a late third round pick. So I didn't love that trade. I didn't love the fact that less than an hour after that trade, there was the quote of it being addition by subtraction. If that was actually the case, why the hell are you even playing Chase Young? Like you're in a year where you need to win games. If you think Chase Young is hurting your chances of winning them, you bench him. They had no issues benching their first round pick. They should not have any issues benching a guy that has hardly played the last few years. So that was nonsense to me. Obviously, Chase Young has been their best defensive lineman and their main source of pressure. So I didn't like that at all. But clearly there is belief in that building that there's something up with Chase Young, whether it's some sort of character thing or they just didn't mesh with him. Or maybe they were worried about that knee and paying him long term with that knee injury, and that's something only they would know. Perhaps that is the case, that they are worried that knee will not hold up to that long term contract. In which case, trading him for whatever you could get makes sense. But without knowing that information, just going off of the film, I did not like that move at all.
Yeah, I mean that was kind of my thoughts last week when I was talking with Doug. This is everything that you were looking for when you declined the 5th year option. What he was doing on the field is everything that you were kind of looking for and wanted to see from him. And we talked about it a couple weeks ago where he was varying his different pass rush moves and all that sort of stuff. And that was something you hadn't seen his rookie year. And you don't even have to believe us. There are some people out there who do great work with offensive linemen and defensive linemen who were saying the same thing about Chase Young, that this was his best year since his rookie year. So it was tough to see. I have a feeling that they're going to regret this in a couple of years, but there was very clearly a fractured relationship there. Because like Mark said, not even like an hour after the trade, it was just leaking comments left and right. And that was some old owner stuff. So hopefully that doesn't keep happening.
I agree.
Maybe we just, completely start all over, but there was clearly something going on between him and the coaching staff and maybe some of his teammates as well with kind of what he's talking about with the San Francisco media and stuff. And yeah, just the player and what he was doing on the field, I think you're going to very clearly you're going to miss. I mean, this past week was rough in terms of pass rush. They only had 10 pressures. That was the fewest they've had this entire year. And edge rushers were pretty non-existent other than the KJ Henry roughing the passer stack. But that one kind of came on an unblocked pressure as well. So it's going to be tough. I do think they're going to regret it. I think Chase Young was looking really, really good, but we don't know everything that was going on behind the scenes. So we can only kind of comment on what we see on the field.
I'm right there with you. We don't have to dwell on it too much. I have the same mindset, though. I feel like as a 24-year-old asset, potentially growing with the coaching staff that might be changing next year, if the issues with the coaching staff, then potentially we could try something new next year. But I guess, got to keep it moving, got a fresh slate for next year. So we'll see how that goes. But gentlemen, I love learning from you this week. It's awesome. For those viewers that are watching us, I appreciate it. Every Tuesday at 5:30, Commanders Film Room. We have a great matchup next week against the Seattle Seahawks. Kenneth Walker, Justice Smith-Njigba, DK Metcalf. It's going to be very interesting. Looking forward to it. Great defensive line on their part too. Gentlemen, have a great night. Everyone else, peace out. Thanks, guys.